The Holy Gospel according to Matthew. Jesus put before the crowds another parable. The kingdom of heaven may be compared to someone who sowed good seed in his field, and while everybody was asleep, an enemy came and sowed weeds among the wheat, and then went away. So when the plants came up and bore grain, then the weeds appeared as well. And the slaves of the householder came and said to him, "Master, did you not sow good seed in your field? Where then did these seeds come from?" He answered, "An enemy has done this." The slaves said to him, "Then do you want us to go and gather them?" But he replied, "No. For in gathering the weeds, you would uproot the wheat along with them. Let both of them grow together until the harvest. And at the harvest time, I will tell the reapers, collect the weeds first and bind them in bundles to be burned. But gather the wheat into my barn." Then he left the crowds and went into the house. And his disciples approached him, saying, "Explain to us the parable of the weeds of the field." He answered, "The one who sows the good seed is the Son of Man. The field is the world, and the good seed are the children of the kingdom. The weeds are the children of the evil one. And the enemy who sowed them is the devil. The harvest is the end of the age, and the reapers are angels. Just as the weeds are collected and burned up with fire, so it will be at the end of the age. The Son of Man will send his angels, and they will collect out of his kingdom all causes of sin and all evildoers, and they will be thrown into the furnace of fire, where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. Then the righteous will shine like the sun in the kingdom of their Father. Let anyone with ears listen." The Gospel of the Lord. How's that for good news? Y'all excited? Just a couple of announcements, if you will, or commercials, if you want to call them that. Just first, an observation. I'm going to report to Pastor Tim this afternoon that some of you actually listened and swapped sides of the sanctuary. You're not in the places y'all should be, and I'm still confused. The second is, I don't know how many of you received the magazine called Living Lutheran, but in it there is this great article that is entitled, "Who is the, quote, real American?" And Bishop Eaton has written a fine article that I would like to commend to you, not only for reading and reflection, but also conversation. It's about American nationalism and what is it to be a Christian really? Who is the real Christian in the world today? So there's some copies out on the table out in the lounge if you want to pick up one. If they are all gone and you still want one, let me know and I can make sure you get one. So what are we going to do with this text today? I've kind of honed in just on one phrase of this huge story that has all kinds of ramifications, and some of it are pretty good, others of it not so much. And that is, where then did these weeds come from? Who among us has not at some point asked that same question? Now, you may not have used the same words, and you may not have used your outside voice in pronouncing them, but I bet every single one of us has at some time or another asked the question, or a question that is a variation on that same theme. For me and for my generation, I think it's now, who took my keys? Where then did my keys go? But either way that you look at how the question is posed, there is an urgency in the question. Those who tended the fields want to know what happened and who is responsible. And I think so do we. We want to know who's responsible. We want to know, we want to discover who knows when the weeds appeared first in the field. We want an explanation. We want somebody that we can blame. Oh, it was my fault. I found them in the milk. The keys, that is. We want someone to be held accountable, even potentially, as the gospel puts forward today, someone that may be even punished because of it. But far too often we see that in our political bickering, in our Facebook posts, in our privately held opinions, Jesus, however, seems less interested in this approach than we are. For he doesn't give it much time nor attention. He just simply says, an enemy has done this. Yeah, and he doesn't explain it. He doesn't identify it. He doesn't name who the enemy is. He doesn't give instructions to find, to drive out, and to punish this enemy. Yet behind our own desire for an explanation and the name of the culprit is a truth that many of us neither like nor want to accept. It's one of the challenges of the gospel. And not just the gospel for today, the gospel that any time you open that book and read, it is a challenge. It's the challenge to become more than we think we are. And it's a challenge that arises every time we face the weeds in our own life and in our own world. And in reality, according to Jesus, is that our lives and our world are a field where the good and the evil, the life and the death, the joy and the sorrows, that which we want and that which we don't want, grow and live side by side. The wheat and the weeds stand together in our world and in each of our lives. That, Jesus says, is what the kingdom, and if you will permit me, I prefer the word the commonwealth of heaven is like. The commonwealth of heaven is like that. And that's good news for us. For it means that despite the weeds in and around us, the commonwealth is still here, my brothers and sisters. The weeds do not overcome nor make absent God's reign here and now. It may not be the fullness of the commonwealth, but it is, nevertheless, the commonwealth of heaven. But the slaves asked, "Don't you want us to pull up the weeds?" "No," says the master. "For in gathering the weeds, you would uproot the wheat along with them." But these aren't just generic weeds. You got to do a little digging into some Greek, which is what it is to me. the parable speaks of a particular weed, Zinzanion, also known as darnel, which is also known as false wheat. What does that do to your story? It grows with the wheat. It looks like wheat. Its roots intertwine with the roots of the real wheat. The difference between the two is not all that readily apparent. And it seems the separation between the wheat and the weeds is not as clear-cut or black and white as Facebook or media or our politicians and our own personal opinions would often have us believe. And in any event, either way, we are not the ones to make that judgment. Pinch me. Sometimes I need that reminder. We're not the ones to uproot those that we see as weeds. And I got to say, in this story, Jesus is pretty clear about that one. Let them grow together until the harvest, he says. Let them grow together until the harvest. Jesus shows more interest in growth than Jesus does in extermination. He is willing to wait and to be patient. OMG, really? If we are, though, his followers, we too will wait and we will be patient amongst the weeds of our lives. And while we wait patiently, let's not get too excited and worked up about the end of the story of this parable. Let's not revel in and celebrate the end of the age and the coming of Jesus as some holy and divine weed whacker now among us. Or I don't think that Jesus intended this parable to be taken that way, but rather with some absolute seriousness. So then I suppose the question is that with all of that, then do we simply do nothing? Do we just sit and wait and wait? No, that's not what Jesus is saying either. For there is plenty to do, and it will be a challenge. Because the words that are translated, let them, as in let them grow together, can also be translated as the word to forgive them. In fact, it is the same word that Jesus spoke from the cross in Luke's gospel, where Jesus says, hanging from the cross, Father, forgive them. Same word, forgive. Same word. Even now on the cross, Jesus is unwilling to pull up the weeds. You see, there is no place in the gospel for Christian vigilantes, by word or by action, against one another or even against ourselves. But instead, Jesus commands, love your enemies. Love your neighbor, love yourself, love God. And you have chosen well, you Lou. that you have chosen love. But it is always breaking open what that work of love is all about for us in the world today. That's the challenge of the gospel today. Are we to forgive the weeds? Are we to love the weeds? The gospel says yes. Forgive them. Love them. And maybe that's how the wheat begins to disentangle its roots from the weed, and itself becomes the wheat and not weeds. And maybe love and forgiveness are what life in the mixed field in which God has planted us here in this part of the Commonwealth is like for us. There's work to do, because I still need to find my keys. Blessings on the journey, my brothers and sisters. Amen.